Good evening and happy Friday to everyone. It is the weekend and I'm excited because I think I'm actually going to leave the house tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. But welcome to the Angela Ray Show. I am delighted that you are here. If you are watching this broadcast on the replay, thank you so much for hanging out with the Angela Ray Show and supporting. For all of you who will be catching the broadcast live, you know what to do. Go ahead and slide in the comments. Let me know how your day was. For all of my newbies, if this is your very first time catching the Angela Ray Show, do me a favor and put a number 1 in the comments, or let me know that you are new to the broadcast. Everyone else, if you want to let me know what you did today, what you had for lunch, I'd be curious to know that, because I had breakfast for lunch and then I just switched it all up today in terms of meals. But I am excited. We are winding down this DivineNine Week Sisterhood Edition, the last interview of this week, and it is actually the first African-American sorority that was founded. We're going to be talking to one of the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated on tonight. For those of you who may not be familiar with the DivineNine is comprised of 9 predominantly African-American sororities and fraternities that are part of the National Pan-Hellenic Council. They include Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, Delta Sigma Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Sigma Gamma Rho, and of course the Iotas. Those are the 9 organizations. And so while many people may be very familiar with sororities and fraternities, you may not be familiar with how many of our members are extremely active beyond college and their contributions to not only this country, but to the world. As a matter of fact, just last week, we lost 2 very humongous heroes among us in Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis, both members of fraternities. All right, so we're going to be getting started in just a moment. Again, we're going to be getting started with our Ray of Motivation Moment. And for our Ray of Motivation Moment for tonight, I just want to ask you, for the people that are surrounding you these days, do you know if you have supporters or reporters? Do you have supporters or do you have reporters? You have to know who is on your team and why they are there, what their purpose is, and what their ultimate goals are, what their interior motives are. When you have reporters, you have people who are only around you, who are only calling to check on you, who are only looking at your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Periscope, whatever, just to see what you have going on so they can report that back to someone else. Or even if you've taking a break from social media, just to be like, girl, she disappeared. She ain't posted to Instagram and I don't know when. That's a reporter. But when you truly have supporters, you will know the difference because of how they interact with you, what that energy is like. And if you're not quite sure, you want to make sure that you are using your true discernment so that you know who's in your circle, who's in your top 5. And if they are truly supporters, or if they are just reporters. And that is your Ray of Motivation Moment for this Friday edition of the Angela Ray Show. Edwin, these not yet. I appreciate you speaking that over my life. They're not quite Michelle Obama arms, but go ahead and speak that over my life. I'm gonna go ahead and take that. I appreciate that so much. All right, so right about now, it is time for me to introduce my special guest for tonight. She is an author, she is a speaker, and she is a success coach. She began her entrepreneurial journey traveling throughout the continent of Africa with leadership expert John Maxwell. She has helped busy women, so many women, coaching them, helping them to release the baggage that they carry. And because this is DivineNine Week, we definitely have to highlight the fact that she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So please help me welcome Stacey Speller. Stacey, can you hear me? I heard you say that you could not hear me a second ago. Are you able to hear me? Because I could hear you just fine. I actually heard you kind of whisper that you couldn't hear me. So your picture just disappeared for a moment. Can you hear?
Can't hear you.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
I can. Mm-hmm.
I
Maybe
can't hear
you.
you at all.
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to take you out of the broadcast and bring you right back on, and we'll see if that makes a difference. Okay. Technical difficulties. Right before the broadcast, we were just talking and talking it up. Can you hear now? Can
Still
you
can't
hear?
hear you.
I can hear you. I'm not sure. Did you change something from when we were just speaking a little bit earlier? So she's going to go out and she's going to try it again. And that's what sometimes we have to do. And you know, what is that? We fall down, but we get up. So she's going to get right back on the broadcast momentarily. So this week, DivineNine Week has focused on our members of our sororities. Next week, we will be focused on the members of our fraternities. You can hear me now?
And now I can hear you. How crazy is that?
Okay, cool. Well, welcome to the Angela Ray Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. And I love
Awesome.
that. I love what you said about the reporters or supporters. That was phenomenal.
You know, it's interesting. I read
That's
something and
real.
I
That's real.
hello. I mean, for real, it
Yeah.
really is. And it's
That's real.
unfortunate that we have to really make that discernment. You just never know why people are quote unquote a part of your team or on your circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very real. That was really good.
So you started your entrepreneurial journey traveling around the continent of Africa. I think I've heard a little bit of your story. You actually were trying to get your husband to get involved with John Maxwell, but God spoke to you and
No,
said no. Is that not
no,
right?
no. Actually, John Maxwell wasn't even in the formula when the
Okay.
whole Africa thing came up. That wasn't even part of it. I was just trying to get my husband to go to Africa because he'd always said he wanted to go to Africa.
Okay. And so then how did
So,
you end up being the one to go to Africa?
well, I was actually, we had visited a church, and the very next day they were having a prayer service at 5:30 in the morning. I was like, okay, these people are serious if they're praying at 5:30 in the morning, because that means you're getting up at like, in Atlanta, you're getting up at like 4:30 to be somewhere at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what, I'm going to go. And I went. And when I was leaving, they were signing people up to go on a trip into South Africa to do prayer and things like that for this conference they were having. I was like, okay, my husband has always said he wanted to go to Africa and make a difference. I was like, okay, I'm going to do what any good wife would do. I'm going to sign him up to go to Africa and be there for this conference. And I did. I signed him up, gave them all his details, everything. On the way home, it's like God just arrested me in the car and said, no, you need to go. And it was like, God, it's only you and I in this car. And I'm not going to tell anybody if you don't tell anybody. You know I'm not supposed to go to Africa. And it was like, no, you're supposed to go. And I went, and it totally changed the trajectory of my life. Long and short of it, I met John in South Africa. That's how I started to speak with him and traveling and having all these amazing experiences, because I just went ahead and was obedient to what God said. And here we are. So, yeah.
So you've worked with women, helping them to release their baggage. And lately you've shifted that work somewhat, and it's become a little bit more specialized, particularly in terms of dating and finding a match. So how did you become a relationship coach?
Well, what happened is I did, well, I mean, I've had my share of stories, to say the least, but I did a lot of leadership work working with John, and I got a chance to do a lot of executive coaching. And it didn't matter what country I was in. It didn't matter how far up the corporate ladder women had climbed. Whenever I was executive coaching them, it always came back to relationships. Either
Mm.
maybe they were having a struggle in their relationships, maybe challenges with their marriage, the fact that they weren't married. And then I would have all these women that I would coach with leadership. We'd always end up talking about their relationships. Maybe they were single, they couldn't figure out why. They were very successfully professional, but they couldn't figure out, but why am I still single? And so they would ask me to help them with that, even though I was hired to be doing leadership work with them. So, leadership requires relationships. And so, because I
Hmm.
started doing so much relationship work within that space, people just started asking me, well, can you just help me with my relationships? Can you help me figure out why this is happening, why I'm still single, what's going on, why do I keep attracting these kind of guys, what's with me? And yeah, and so I take all of my leadership skills and experience, and I'm able to bring those to bear to help with the relationships. So it works wonderfully. I love it, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
How would you describe your most successful client in terms of relationship coaching? And what I mean by that, the person, whose story sticks out to you, no names, no specifics. You can change the location to protect the innocent. But the person who, either really had bad relationship after bad relationship, or maybe they hadn't been on a date in 5 years, and all of a sudden they were able to attract not only a date, but the mate of their dreams.
Okay, well,
Oh,
I
I like
actually
that.
have
Don't just attract a
not
date,
a date.
attract the mate
Get
of your.
bait.
I like that.
Okay, I'm gonna use it. So there is somebody that comes to mind, and she actually wouldn't even mind me using her. In fact, I had in my stories yesterday, I had a testimonial from her, and it was just, it's a tearjerker because she'd been married, and the divorce ended very horribly. And she had not dated in maybe 7 years.
Ooh.
She'd sworn off love and just threw herself into her career. Then she got back out there and her picker was off. I mean, she was picking and attracting every kind of loser you could ever imagine. In fact, one guy that she wanted to get serious with, and I said, "Are you sure?" And I kind of got her to see things differently. Well, guess what? Since the time he asked her to get married until today, which has been about 5 years, that same guy's been married and divorced 3 times. So,
Oh.
right. So he was clearly not the one. But through kind of getting her to see things differently, helping her identify her blind spots, how she was actually showing up, how she was self-sabotaging, picking wrong, attracting wrong, all of that, she now just celebrated her 7-year wedding anniversary. So yeah, yeah. So that's always still my favorite because I mean, I even got to go to their engagement party and yeah. So that probably will remain one of my favorites because to have seen her in the state that she was when we first started working together, and then 7 years later she's still happily married. So that would be my favorite because
That is awesome.
it was just so extreme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Ooh, somebody in 5 years has had three. I know somebody who's had a lot, but not in 3 years. Ooh, that's a
Wait,
lot.
and a leader in the church. Not trying to be shady. I'm just saying.
Ooh, girl. We're going to go get that healing oil for him, Stacey. We're going to go get that healing oil. Okay. Well, of course, now we are in the midst of a pandemic, and the things that
We
we
are.
normally could do in terms of dating or getting to know someone. And I guess this is, this question I'm about to ask, this is good for men and women because people are looking for ways to connect. People are experiencing pandemic fatigue where they're
Mm-hmm.
exhausted with staying home. And so they're trying to figure out safe ways to explore and to connect. Do you have ideas for people in terms of being able to connect during social distancing?
Well, the first thing I would say is I think that this is like a reset time. And if you've ever wondered maybe if there's something you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or you got some blind spots or some work you could do on yourself, this is the perfect time. Like, this is the time to say, you know what? When I'm coming out of this quarantine or this pandemic, I'm coming out better than I went in. And what do I need to do? And what are some things I need to take a look at? Because to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, well, we know what that is. That's the definition of insanity. So the first thing I would say is make great use of this time and identify some things that maybe you can do to develop yourself. Because remember, we attract as we are. So if you want X, you need to become X, because I see too many times that people it's like they want the Bentley, but they've got a Volkswagen attitude, and that doesn't work. So that would be my first recommendation. The second thing is, I mean, with the advent of technology, there's really no reason not to connect. I mean, you meet people online anyway with the online dating and things like that, and I'm a big fan of online dating, or friends that introduce you, and you can hop on a Zoom or something like we're doing, and you really sit and get to know each other. I mean, I have clients that they sit and they have like a date night, and He's in his place, she's in her place, maybe not even the same city or same state. They order dinner. Maybe he'll do an Uber Eats and have it sent to her. They'll get a glass of wine, turn on some nice music, have a great dinner. And it forces you to get to know the person on a deeper level. Because now you don't end up like go straight to physical, because it can't. So now it's like, okay, let me invest some time and energy into this person. Let me actually get to know them a little bit more. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to really take that time to get to know the person.
Okay.
And with technology, why not?
Why not? All right, we
Why
got a
not?
great question from Dr. Feemster. This is my line sister.
What's her name?
Tawana.
Okay. Hey, Tawana.
Can you see that question?
What does getting back out there mean?
I think you had
Okay.
mentioned that when you were talking about one of your clients earlier.
Okay. Well, when I say getting back out there, she was not even interested in dating. So she'd sworn off dating. So if a guy did approach her, whether professionally, because she was an insurance professional, so she would meet different guys, she shut it down. She didn't even, can I get your number? Can I do it? Nope, nope, nope. She was in a complete, I've been too badly hurt and I'm not going there. And so she finally got into a place where it's like, okay, I'm going to be open and available to date. So that's what I mean by getting back out there, where she was like, okay, if a guy does ask me out, or if he asks me for my phone number, or he smiles and wants to get to know me, I'll be receptive. So that's what I meant.
All right. We got another question from Leela Shalila.
What apps do I recommend? There are so many. I don't know that I believe it's the app. In fact, somebody told me about an app. In fact, I wrote it down because I'd never even heard of it before. They're always coming out with new apps, but this particular app is, it's supposed to be like so upscale. The kind of guys that are up on there are just like really, really, it's called The League. And it's supposed to be very quality, high-end type guys. I don't know. I've not gone on there to see, and I don't know anybody who's had a success with it, but I do have a client that is a part of it. But I've heard people meeting from everywhere, to Black people meet to Match. I don't know that any particular site has, an advantage over the other. It's kind of more, how are you showing up? And being able to have the skills and the tools to be able to get right on and see, okay, is this a deal breaker? Yes or no? Like, not to waste a whole lot of time, because there are deal breaker questions that you can ask once you're clear on who you are and what you want. You can go through your deal breaker questions almost like boom, boom, boom. And before you even get even remotely emotionally invested, say, you know what, this is probably not going to be a good fit.
Now, have you had anybody meet somebody and marry successfully from Tinder? I've not been on Tinder, but I hear that's like swipe left, swipe right. And that's for people who are just looking for casual interactions.
My understanding of Tinder, of the people that I know that have been on there, that's more of a hookup.
Okay. I was trying to be real nice. That's why I said casual.
Well, you should have
interaction.
you should have got a different guest if you wanted to be nice.
That is what I heard, though. I heard the Tinder is the hookup place. Yes.
Yeah, that's just a hookup place. That's not if you're trying to, like, people who are serious and really are looking for a quality, mate, and to actually maybe have a real relationship. No.
So now you are married.
I am married.
How long have you been married?
I've been married 20 years.
Awesome. So you have 2 decades under the belt. For those who may be aspiring to marriage, maybe young in their marriage, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned in marriage?
Oh my God. There are so many. First of all, marriage will show you yourself more than anything else, which I think is very interesting, because you'll get a much better sense of who you actually are. Because you're going to have to compromise, you're going to have to communicate. I think what makes, I guess the biggest lesson I've learned is probably grace, like to give grace, because nobody's perfect. And yeah, grace. That's probably the biggest lesson, because if you hold on to things, if you don't give grace, you're gonna want to hold on to things. You can become resentful, and it just doesn't work. So you have to just be willing to say, you know what, I'm not perfect, and neither is he. So I'm gonna just give a whole lot of grace. I have a very my approach to marriage is very interesting because before I got married, I made so many relationship mistakes. You could fill volumes of books of all the relationship mistakes I made, all the dating, disasters. And it was all because of me. It was because I had unresolved issues. I had serious insecurity issues. I had rejection and abandonment issues. And so I would like self-sabotage. I mean, I was the problem. It's kind of like, what do you and all your problems have in common? I was the problem. And so that's why I'm so passionate, because I feel like if I can turn the ship around and find true love, anybody can do it. And I have self-awareness. Like now I recognize it's not even easy to be married to me. My husband, it's hard to be married to me because I'm so outgoing, so strong-willed, quirks, just all kinds of quirks, and yet, because I have now that level of awareness about myself, then it makes being married a whole lot easier.
You just mentioned book, and you have a book. Tell us a little bit about it.
I actually have 3 books. I
Okay.
have
Count them all out. Count them all out.
I have Directions to Destiny, which is my book about kind of relationships, and I have The Designer Life, which is kind of just overall looking at how do you design your life the way you want it to be versus just taking life by default. And then I have Rest Well, which is my 90-day devotional for women, just to be able to turn things over at night and not have your head spinning and be able to just get some rest and go to sleep and trust God in the process. So, yeah.
Now, this is DivineNine Week, and all week long, I've spoken to members of the DivineNine.
Mm-hmm.
You're a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority.
Yes, ski-wee.
How has being a member of your organization impacted how you view sisterhood?
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love my sorority. And it made, pledging, I pledged back when you pledged like a long time and you spent a lot of time with your line sisters, 8.5 weeks to be exact. And what that did with teaching you how to kind of get along and with other women and share and compromise and understand all the different nuances and stuff. I mean, to this day, I'm still in touch with all of my line sisters. We still just love each other, support each other. So I think it's really helped set the foundation for me being just such a champion of women. So it's had a huge, huge impact. I mean, I would not trade the experience for anything. And I absolutely love my sisterhood.
We got a question from one of our very loyal supporters here, the Angela Ray Show, Edwin. Can you see his question as well?
I do advocate. This is a guy asking about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, I'm all about interracial dating. I would advocate for any woman to date outside of race, because my position is this: you have to have an open mind, because especially if you have a faith perspective and you're believing for your blessing, you don't get to say how the blessing is going to come packaged. God gets to choose that. So you have to be open-minded, and to limit yourself to a particular race or, anything like that, I just think is very limiting. I'm a big proponent of dating outside of your race.
Now, you are a very successful woman. You have multi-tiers of success, both professionally as well as personally. But yet no one arrives to success without some of those valleys. There's peaks and there's valleys. How would you say you've overcome some of your strongest challenges?
I've been so fortunate that probably in my deepest valley, I've had just such an amazing, amazing support system. Most especially in my dad. My dad is late. I just lost him last year, but When I tell you, I mean, he has been there to help me pick up the pieces in major, major ways. And so his wisdom is probably what has allowed me to come through those challenges, coupled with the fact that I am a woman of some serious radical faith. I mean, I am like, I'm that bungee jumper kind of faith. You know, some people test the waters. I go all in, I dive in and jump. And so, you know, my faith has just gone from level to level. Every valley experience has elevated my faith to just a whole different level. So I would say probably my faith, and just knowing how faithful that God is, and actually believing it. You know, I'm one of those crazy people that actually take God at His word. Um, and so I believe what He's promised. I believe what He said. And so even in the darkest moments, I still trust in His light.
Let's say someone wanted to work with you. Oh, woman wanted to work with you one on one, especially,
Mm-hmm.
as Tawana said earlier, getting back out there. What might that first discovery session, if you will, be like?
Well, I only do my one-on-one coaching by application, and we would hop on a Zoom call. So we'd sit and kind of look at each other and chat, and I would ask some questions and make sure that they have a clear vision of what they're actually looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we say we want one thing, but everything about us is doing something different. So I'd make sure that I had a clear understanding of their vision and that they had a clear understanding of their vision. And if it's a good fit for us to work together or not, then we would meet weekly via Zoom for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. I do full on assessments that take about 45 minutes that they do to help them see their blind spots, how they're hardwired, how they're showing up, how they're being perceived. And then we would work each week towards a roadmap of what their vision is, what they actually want to accomplish. Because
And
some women don't want to get married. So maybe it's not that you want to get married. Maybe you just want to find a partner. You're in a different phase in your life. You're like, you know what, I'm good. I've been married, or I don't need to get married. So depending on what they want, because I work with women in different phases. I work with that woman who's like been so career focused, and now she's looking up and the clock is ticking. She's like, whoa, 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 I want to be able to get married and have a baby. Some women who they don't want a baby, but they just want the husband. Some women who just want a partner. They're coming out of a divorce. So just depending on what their circumstances are.
now you mentioned one of your books was about, designing your life. Let's talk a little bit about maybe people aren't looking for relationship coaching, but more success coaching. Does
Mm-hmm.
that look the same in terms of, getting ready to work with you?
It does. It does look the same. And, I still do some executive coaching if that's what somebody wants, because some people come and it's not just, the crux tend to be romantic relationships, but sometimes it's difficult relationships, maybe with a family member, maybe, not navigating your relationships properly in your career. And it's hampering your career success because maybe you're not navigating those relationships well. Maybe you want to go and get that promotion and you want to actually see, well, wait a minute, what am I doing wrong? Why do I keep getting passed up? How am I showing up? I need to do an assessment and identify my blind spots. We all have blind spots, Angela.
Yeah, we do.
It's just the reality where, we think we're all good in one particular thing and everybody else is kind of like, no, girl, you're not as good as you thought. You probably need to work through that. And so being able to have an assessment to say, let's look at your blind spots. Let's look at how we minimize them. And let's see how you show up, because, when I'm doing executive coaching and success coaching, every woman wants to break through the glass ceiling, but let's deal with the sticky issues on the floor first. So, yeah.
And so as I begin to wrap up a little bit, I just want to kind of get your opinion on what you think the legacy of this period of time in our history is going to be, particularly for our members of DivineNine organizations. I'm talking about both the legacy of this pandemic as well as the legacy of social justice, because we didn't know that they were going to be intertwined when in March the world shut down. But when George Floyd died, all of a sudden we had two things going on at the same time.
Well, if nothing else, I feel like this has shown us just in general how resilient we are and have had to be as a people for a long time. Because was it not enough that we were fighting a pandemic? that then we had to go and also on the same front deal with, fighting the racial justice issue. I tend to believe, and this may sound sexist or racist, I think Black women are going to be what we're going to save America from herself. I really do. I think that we are, because we're seeing this, unfold where mothers, when George Floyd called for his mother, he summoned every woman everywhere. And it tugs at our heartstrings because we're like, that could be our son, our brother, our father, our husband, like that could be any man in our life. And that fierce warrior in us just kind of rises up and says, you know what, enough is enough. I spent a lot of time, I used to live in South Africa, and one of the things that helped to start dismantle apartheid was when women had had enough. And that's why they have a huge Women's Day celebration, because they have an expression, when you strike a woman, you have struck a rock. And it's loosely translated out of Zulu, but that's kind of the inference. And I feel like that's what this moment is in time. Like, you have struck the heart of Black women and you've struck a rock, and enough is enough. And I think that's going to be the legacy that we're going to leave. I'm very hopeful for some real positive change that's going to actually come out of this. God knows it's long overdue, and it's beyond unfortunate that so many of our Black men have had to die to get to this place. But for the love of God, let's not let it be in vain, and let's really see some true systemic change.
Amen. So, just in wrapping this up, do you have anything else that you want to share?
No, I'm just really delighted to be here and get a chance to kind of connect with you and chat with your viewers. I'm very honored that you would even take this time on a Friday night to get to have a little chit chat. So yeah, thank you
You
so
are
much.
welcome. Well, your Instagram and your website are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So for anyone who wants to get you've had a little bit of the appetizer, you've had the coconut shrimp, but now if you want the steak and the potatoes and the asparagus and the bread, you got to go
Wait,
ahead and go on the website.
not the coconut shrimp.
That that tells you what I'm thinking about right now. I would love to go to Outback and get some coconut shrimp, right? But I'm not playing with the outdoors. I'm really not. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, gotta
it's not
stay.
what I'm doing right now.
No, we just have to, we have to do what we have to do and find, I'm taking the approach of, let me just find joy in the simplest of things. And I don't care how simple it is. I'm gonna find some joy and exploit that joy,
Oh
because
yeah.
the things we used to do, we don't do. And so it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna enjoy this then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a shift, or the word that Edwin has used on my show in previous broadcasts. It's been a pivot. Definitely
That's what
been
I call it. I call it the pandemic pivot. And
a
that is exactly what we've had to do. It's the pandemic pivot. And what does life look like, now? What I would encourage everybody to really ask yourself, now that we've had this pandemic pivot, what do you want to be different when this pandemic is over? Like, what do you want to actually be different in your life, and work towards, like get that vision and then go towards that vision. This is the perfect time.
It really is. It really is. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule on a Friday night. I mean, I know we're not always hanging out in the streets on Friday night these days, but there are other things that you could have been doing. So I appreciate your time and your expertise as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye. Well, that's it for this Friday edition of the Angela Ray Show. As always, I would like to remind you of Ray of Motivation number 54. Cleaning a mirror does not change the person who is reflected in it. Until next time, I encourage you to go out and be the change. Have a great weekend.